Hello listeners, welcome to Views on Health. After quite some time, I have with me on the program tonight Professor Indika Karunatilaka, who is a professor in medical education at the University of Colombo. And for the information of our listeners, Professor Indika Karunatilaka is also the Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Academic Consortium for Public Health. Having said that, Professor Indika Karunatilaka was recently conferred with a very prestigious award, which is called the Miles Award in Mentorship, Innovation and Leadership in Education Scholarship. And this prestigious award was conferred on Professor Indika Karunatilaka at the Asia Pacific Medical Education Conference held in Singapore. Congratulations, Professor, at the very outset, and we are very proud of you, and I'm sure Sri Lanka too, as a country, will be very proud that one of its sons has been conferred with such a prestigious award in the field of education.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting the program.
Our pleasure again, Professor. And having said that, the focus tonight is on medical education. But before that, Professor, if you can share a few insights into how this Miles Award was conferred.
Yes, the APMEC conference for the Asia Pacific Medical Education is actually the largest medical education conference held in this region, and even worldwide is one of the largest. At this time, about 1,000 international participants attended the conference, and it's attended by topmost leaders in medicine and medical education worldwide. And they have completed 20 years. This year was the 20th anniversary, so it was a very significant award. And this Miles Award, which is the acronym, what we call the Mentorship, Innovation and Leadership in Medical Education Scholarship, is one of the topmost awards that is awarded by this medical education community and the conference. And previously it has been awarded to top leaders in medical education, namely Professor Ronald Harden, and then he is the person who invented the assessment method called OSCE, where medical doctors and medical postgraduates are very well aware. And similarly, Professor John Nosini from United States, again, he has introduced workplace-based assessment into medical education. So basically it's an award that is dedicated for world leaders in medical education. In that way, it's a huge recognition for my contribution as well as for the country, because I'm the first Sri Lankan to receive this prestigious award.
So congratulations once again, and let's hope that this is going to spur you to reach even greater heights in this particular field in the years to come.
It is. It's a huge recognition and a huge motivation, to do better and to contribute in the best of my capacity.
And going on from there, Professor, so medical education, education is education, and the combination of medical education, who is your target audience in this respect?
Yes, actually, if you compare it with other areas in medicine, in the field of medicine, we could say the target audience in medical education is somewhat restricted or limited, because medical education is simply, if you take it in a very simple approach, it's about training medical students, maybe undergraduate, maybe postgraduate, training medical students to become better doctors who can serve the community, country and the world in a better way, and to find out what are the ways, innovative ways of training them and making their training better, and then that means teaching them and examining them, all these areas, and finding out new ways and to identify the new technology and how can we use that in medical education. So in that way, the target audience would be somewhat limited, because it's basically aiming at the medical students as well as basically the medical doctors. Having said that, the outflow or the basically impact of medical education is far-reaching, because when you teach medical students and make them doctors and better doctors, that impact would reach millions and millions of people. So even though the target audience, the primary target audience is very limited, the overall target audience is actually very large, very, very large. So in that case, everyone, not only doctors, but not only those are in health sector, but everyone has a stake in medical education, and they are basically stakeholders in medical education, and they should have a say in how medical education should develop in the future.
Professor, if you take the public at large, who are going to be the beneficiaries of a focused medical education program, so you train your doctors to do what they should do in terms of their chosen field, the ethical practices in medicine, being very professional about everything, and going on to, I would say, innovation in research in all aspects of medicine, that they can bring out the best in themselves and thereby for the patients they serve. Now, if you take the patients, they just walk in and expect the best. And obviously you will try to give the best from your side. But before that, shouldn't a patient also be educated? You spoke of them being the larger beneficiaries. But shouldn't they too, the public now, I come under that category. I'm not a medical professional, so in effect I'm a lay person and I would be a patient of a doctor if I'm not well. Isn't the onus on us too to take care of ourselves?
Definitely. I mean, that is, I think, when it comes to health, what is more important is what we say, that prevention is better than cure. Prevention is better than cure. So it's very, very important, because when you come to the hospital, what you see is actually the tip of the iceberg, because the larger number of patients actually don't come to the hospital. They sometimes stop at primary care level, or sometimes maybe even self-medication. And if you take the community at large, whether they are sick or not, they also need health care. Everyone needs health care. So, if you take the community, I mean, so everyone, whether they have an illness or not, they require health care. Very importantly, one very important aspect of health care is disease prevention. How you prevent diseases, because that is much more important than treating the patients when you get that. So, similarly, another area is health promotion. Now, disease prevention is fine, is important, but you have to go beyond that. Because how we live, the healthy lifestyles. So, those things are not relevant only for the patients. They are relevant for everyone, regardless whether they have illness or not. So, health promotion is a very important area. Health education is very important area. So, those are the competencies that need to be inculcated among general public. What are the good lifestyle, good healthy habits? So, we need to inculcate that knowledge, not only knowledge, but the behavior among not only patients, but general public. So, where does the medical education comes in? Where the medical education comes in is basically equipping the doctors and health professionals in that capacity of health education and health promotion. So that's why medical education is not just training them in a hospital. It is basically giving a set of competencies that would help them to serve the community at large. Not just teaching them, not just lecturing them, but making them good quality, better quality doctors who can serve the community. So that is where the medical education comes into play.
So what are these competencies that you want them to achieve?
It's very wide. It's very wide. Yeah. I think before asking what are those competencies, the first question that we need to ask is, what are the health needs of our country and our community? Because generally, the doctors we produce should be able to serve this community and this country first. So what are the health needs? That should be the first question. So those health needs could be identified based on the disease patterns and maybe the morbidity mortality patterns, the socio-economic situation now. If you take the current situation, the situation has really changed, and the change in disease patterns, so they are ever changing. The change in disease patterns are there, and change in demographic patterns. If you take current situation, and in the future there will be more elderly population, so their needs should be different. So the first question to be asked is, what are the health needs of the country and the community? Then the next question is, to cater for those health needs, what are the competencies that the doctors should be having to cater for them? So that those are the competencies that we need to identify. So they can be very general, and they can be changing also, because with time to time the health needs should be changing. That's why medical education is also ever changing. Based on the country situation, based on the economic situation, health situation, they are changing. But if I am being very general, if you ask what are those competencies, I can give some examples. They need clinical skills. They need very good clinical skills. There's no doubt about that. And they need very extensive training, clinical training. Because when it comes to medicine and medical education, unlike many other professions, sometimes a split-second decision would determine the life and death of a patient. Therefore, to take that decision, they need to be thoroughly trained. That's why medical education medical training is one of the most strenuous training in the world. Probably the most strenuous, because the decision depends on maybe on one person, sometimes without supervision, at that point of care. So therefore that training has to be very extensive. Thousands and thousands of clinical training on range of diseases is required. But that's not the only thing. The knowledge. You need knowledge. Because to take good decisions you need knowledge. But then the problem is knowledge is ever changing. Knowledge is changing so fast. New knowledge is coming up. And so many research papers being published. So how to basically cope up with all this new knowledge? What we mentioned as guidelines some time ago is now wrong. What we learned in medical school 20 years ago, if we try to practice the same, we will be basically chased away. Because it has changed. Now one good example, even COVID. The guidelines are changing so fast. That's why the health system is changing, the knowledge is changing. So they should be able to update with the capacity of lifelong learning. They should be developed as lifelong learners. Once you become a doctor, education never finishes. You can't get your MBBS and say that I'm happy, my knowledge learning is over, now I'm fully fit. That is not the way the world thinks. So that's another very important competency. And then, like you have mentioned, the health education, health promotion, then the communication skills, and ethical and professional behavior is very important. Lifelong learner. And nowadays the technology, information technology, searching for information, all these are very important. I have just mentioned few areas. So now you can realize that what a vast range of competencies that has to be inculcated among medical doctors in general and health professionals. So that is where medical education is all about. Continuously looking for those competencies and continuously looking for better ways of inculcating those competencies.
So, Doctor, once they pass out as doctors and then in the process they go through all these aspects of training, it's sort of emphasized to them how important it is to keep on learning.
Very good, very important.
That they just cannot say, I'm qualified, like you said a while ago. A doctor cannot say that, but he or she has got to look ahead and accept what is happening, what is evolving in medicine and in the medical field, and encompass them into their chosen disciplines of medicine. Now, that is, as you say, a lifelong process. As long as they practice medicine, they need to be open-minded and alert to what is happening around and incorporate the new techniques and garner new knowledge to treat their patients. Now, the importance of wanting to do that is something, I think, part of medical education, where you have to emphasize to them that they have to keep learning.
Very, very important question. I think you have basically hit the nail on its head, because once you graduate, in the past, that was a belief. You, after a lot of hardship, lot of challenges, you enter medical school and everyone is happy, your family is happy. After 5 or 6 years you graduate, you get your MBBS. Now you are fine. You are fine for your life. That was the belief in the past. Not anymore. Because knowledge is changing. If you don't keep yourself updated, very soon you are going to be redundant. That's the situation, because the guidelines are changing so fast, the medical system is changing. So other countries actually realized that long ago. So those countries, if you take developed countries like United States, UK, Australia, it's mandatory for doctors to continue their learning. What we call lifelong learning. Sometimes you might call it continuing medical education. Sometimes you might call it continuous professional development. It's very important that you continue to update your knowledge, develop your knowledge, but not only knowledge, even the attitudes, even the behaviors. Because even those domains are changing. The way you look at communication, now it's changing with the advent of social media. Even the way you look at certain values are changing. So how you develop your attitudes, your professionalism, your behavior, how you continuously improve, that is very, very important. That's why many other countries they have basically make it a systematized. They are in the system. It's mandatory. It's mandatory for you to do your continuing medical education. After 5 years, you need to show maybe a certain amount of points to show that you have learned those, and then develop yourself. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we didn't have such system for long. Even though there were attempts made to establish continuing medical education, continuous professional development in Sri Lanka, especially Sri Lanka Medical Association has played a huge role, and myself also involved. It was only now that the Ministry of Health has issued a circular accepting or endorsing the need for continuous professional development. So it's a long way to go, but I think at least one very important step very recently that the ministry has endorsed that continuous professional development is essential for medical doctors.
So that is mandatory now?
Not exactly mandatory yet. By the circular, the ministry has endorsed the system.
Right.
A system where, because previously one allegation or one complaint regarding establishing continuous professional development in Sri Lanka is that after graduation they don't have many opportunities to improve your knowledge. They don't have many opportunities because all the big conference happened in Colombo or maybe in Kandy. So doctors in faraway areas, they don't have the access to knowledge. So that was one challenge or complaint against continuous professional development. But recently, in that way, actually, COVID was a blessing in disguise. Because of that, online learning, online education, online resources were developed, and a lot of colleges and associations have developed a lot of material, and the SLMA Intercollegiate Committee, actually I started during my presidency in 2020, has played a huge role in establishing that. So all these together, now we are in a position to establish continuous professional development island-wide.
So what steps are being taken to achieve those?
Yeah, so the first very important step was that circular by the Ministry of Health, and then we have identified who are the providers who can provide this material, because we can't allow everyone and they have to be certified providers. So we have identified the professional colleges, medical association and trade unions and the Ministry of Health as kind of accredited providers for continuous professional development material. So they can provide it maybe face-to-face sessions, and even the Sri Lanka Medical Association conference, that's also CPD now. And they can provide them online, and they'll be recognized formally by the Ministry of Health, so that the doctors can follow them and provide evidence that they have followed and get the certificate. So that process is being established now.
How long will it take initially?
We want to take it as soon as possible. We are conducting the first step, that is, we have trained the mentors. So one very important aspect of this program is we identified mentors. Those mentors are senior consultants. So the trainees will be allocated to those senior mentors, and they will be guiding them during the process. So this will be a real quality improvement program. So hopefully this should lead to a quality enhancement in healthcare provision, because ultimately no point of just going to a lecture and listening. You have to put that into practice, your own improvement. That is where the mentors come in. So the mentors will guide the trainees. Okay, now you have learned this. This is how you can put that into practice in your setting. So that's the most important thing. Rather than just getting them to go through a series of lectures or online training programs, we want them to provide evidence that they can put them into practice. So this, we are hoping in this very difficult, challenging circumstances, this would be one step forward, or maybe a silver line in a dark cloud, to make sure that the healthcare quality in Sri Lanka improves.
It is excellent as it is, considering that we don't have all the resources we need. Despite that, the best is being done, both to educate doctors as well as take care of patients. You spoke of a certificate that will be given, awarded to the doctors who go through the course. How long would it take for them to get a certificate? And
yes.
Thereafter, do they still continue to have education?
Yes.
They don't sit back and say, I got the certificate. No, you have to continue.
No. Yeah, so actually that's why it was a very challenging process. It took a long time to establish this process. So what we are thinking is actually online system, because everyone is now very familiar with online, an online system, online portfolio system, where the doctors should keep the evidence. I mean, something very similar to social media. Keep their evidence related to their learning, and the mentors will go through and provide feedback. So based on those evidence, they can show that they have accumulated this amount of credits, and based on that the certificate will be issued. And the process that is planned is they continue for 3 years, and after 3 years the certificate is issued, and that certificate would be valid for another 3 years. But then they need to restart with their online work and work for next 3 years. So during next 3 years, next certificate. So it will go in cycles. So that's the plan that is there. So at the moment we haven't made it mandatory, because still the systems has to be in place. But as time goes on, it will be made mandatory, and then there will be incentives that will be given for this, will be planned. So it will be in the system very soon.
So certainly augurs well for the healthcare system in the country.
Exactly.
Because every doctor who has passed out is going to be that extra professional in his or her approach in taking care of patients and delivering giving of their best, I would say, to the patients. Doctor, if end of the day, is this going to be a costly exercise?
It is. I mean, we don't want to make this a costly exercise for the learners. Because I mean, it has to be as kind of feasible and practical as possible. But from the organization point of view, Ministry of Health point of view, it's going to be an extensive kind of plan and a lot of work. So that's why, that's probably one reason that it took so long to be established in Sri Lanka. Because there are 40,000 doctors registered in Sri Lanka Medical Council, and in Sri Lanka there are about at least 30,000 doctors who are practicing. And actually we are planning to extend this to other health professions also, because they also need to develop their skills, their attitudes, behaviors. So we'll be starting with the doctors and then move into other healthcare professions. So we are talking about thousands and thousands. So it's going to be a very laborious, enormous exercise. I mean, it was intensive exercise, but I think if you have to move forward as a country, it's a must.
In fact, my question was actually it's like the infrastructure when I said the costly exercise, because to set the whole thing up, and then so that it can be shared with the doctors, who in turn will learn and then go on, becoming more and more professional in their approach to medical care. And rightly said, Dr. Mai, that's another question about encompassing other medical sort of paramedics into the system, because you have the nurses, you have other technicians, you have various support staff of the medical system. All of them too need to have the same approach. So you intend encompassing them into the system?
Of course you must, because I mean, healthcare is ultimately teamwork. I mean, the team should work together. So there is not much point of developing only one category. I mean, we are starting with doctors because that is maybe the most practical way to do, because anyway even unofficially, professional development is somewhat established among doctors because university-based education has been there for long, so it's established. So it's easier to start with them. But we need to move towards other categories also because they need them. They need for their professional development, they need for their career development, personal development, and more than that, that is important for the teamwork and also the overall healthcare system development in the country. So it's a must. And again, this is an enormous exercise and it's going to be a kind of very gigantic Herculean effort, but I think we have to do it.
So in fact, even the doctor concerned is having that proactive approach, very professional. Obviously, the team that works with the doctor will see that. So in that itself, they can follow something. Even though they are not being directly trained.
Correct.
But they can see that this is how the doctor is doing this.
Correct.
And the doctor in turn can also speak to them.
Correct.
And say this is how things have to be approached.
Yeah.
So that as it is he or she, the doctor concerned, is passing on that sort of relevant professional knowledge to the rest of the team.
Correct. Very correct. I mean, that is why we want to bring in this concept of mentoring. So you bring in the mentor. So mentor take the responsibility of guiding the whole team. That's the concept that we want to bring in. The mentor for the whole healthcare team. So the senior person, qualified person, supporting everyone. So that it's in turn, it converts into high quality teamwork, obviously, and also improvement in healthcare.
Thank you, Doctor. And time has caught up with us. So what's your message, take-home message?
Take-home message in basically for medical profession is that we need to develop our medical education in such a way that it will cater for the needs of the country, and also the development needs of the country. And for the patients, I think the message is, even for the patients, knowledge is important. Medical knowledge is important. So, take care of your health. Try to identify good resources of health education and learn from them and look after your health.
Thank you, Dr. There we end this very interesting discussion on medical education. And thank you, Professor Indika Karunatilaka, the professor in medical education at the University of Colombo. And also Professor Indika Karunatilaka is the Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Academic Consortium for Public Health. Having said that, I think I should conclude by also once again congratulating you for being bestowed this prestigious Miles Award in mentorship, innovation, and leadership in education scholarship at the Asia Pacific Medical Education Conference in Singapore in May 2023. Congratulations, Professor. And on that note, we end this interesting discussion. My thanks also go to Inoka Gamage for technical assistance. I'm Fatima Razikada saying good night and looking forward to your company next Monday, same time on Views on Health.